Here we go with our third set of notes in the Taxonomy and Plants unit, this one on the types of plants that actually have true seeds. Before we start talking about our different groups of plants, though, I want to talk a little bit about plant growth, which has something to do with what we finished on last time, our xylem and phloem, our vascular tissues. And basically there's two types of plant growth. The first one is called primary growth, and this is where the roots or the stems of the plants elongate, or they get longer. And this is always going to happen at the end, so at the very tips of the plants, at the ends of the roots and the top tips of the shoots. And this is an area called the apical meristem. This is where that primary growth is happening. The other type of growth is called secondary growth. This is where stems increase their thickness by adding additional layers of xylem and phloem. And this has the added advantage of being able to create something called annual rings. So you can actually trace the age of a tree by looking at the yearly growth of a xylem, the xylem tissue. So it shows the age of the trees as well as environmental conditions, because you can look at the thickness of the rings or the thinness of the rings, and they could tell you a little bit about if it was a wet year, if it was a dry year, or you might be able to see evidence of forest fires and things like that. And just as an aside, this picture up here, while I don't want to say is a fake, is often used mistakenly. There's a popular internet email going around talking about a soldier leaving his tree parked by the tree when he goes up to World War I, and he dies and never comes back to claim his bike, and this is where the tree is now. Well, unfortunately, that is not accurate, and we'll talk in class about how or why that is not accurate. So the first group of plants that we're going to talk about is division Coniferophyta, more commonly known as the conifers. These guys are also sometimes known as gymnosperms. The term gym means naked, sperm means seeds. They have a naked seed. Same reason why gymnasiums are called that, because back in ancient Greece, men used to work out naked, or the original Olympics were always done naked. So they're called naked seeds. It's a seed without a lot of protection, at least not after that cone opens up. And so as far as reproduction goes, these guys obviously do produce seeds. So unlike our ferns and our mosses, they do produce true seeds, which are in a protective cone. And of course, since the ferns have vascular tissue, you'd expect that these guys would have vascular tissue, especially considering how tall they grow. So yes, indeed, they do have vascular tissue. They have both xylem and phloem. So since conifers have seeds, we should probably talk about what the heck a seed is. Well, a seed is basically made up of three main parts. You have the embryo, right, so that's the number one part. And that's just basically the developing plant, right? It's a baby plant. And then you also have either an endosperm or a cotyledon, and we see that in our diagrams up here. Right, here's endosperm, and here's cotyledon in these guys. So they both have cotyledons in this case. And this is basically just food for the growing embryo, so they can stay alive. And then you also have a seed coat, which provides protection for the seed. So you have seed coat that surrounds the seed to keep it alive. So you've got a developing plant, and you've got a coat to keep it protected, and you've got food. Additionally, seeds are often contained within a fruit. The fruit technically is just a plant ovary that contains a seed. So if you think of it that way, this is why some people say that a tomato is not really a vegetable, it's actually a fruit, which is true. It is the ripened ovary of a tomato plant that contains the seeds. Vegetables are more along the lines of, at least scientifically speaking, something like a carrot, which isn't actually a reproductive structure. And so what's the advantage of all this stuff, of having a seed with protection and food, and then a nice juicy fruit, which might entice something to come along and eat that fruit? Well, it helps the plant spread all around the globe, really, right? If a plant falls somewhere, or a seed falls somewhere, it has a good chance of surviving, it has a good chance of germinating, and that fruit helps the dispersal as well. Something, a bear comes along and eats those berries, or eats that strawberry, or eats that apple, and then walks somewhere else and does what bears do in the woods, then you get your seed planted in the ground in a nice pile of fertilizer, thus helping that plant grow. And finally, in addition, other than fruit, there's many things that can help a seed spread, as you can see from all these pictures and what I have listed here. Obviously, seeds could spread via wind. Think of these guys right here, these little helicopter plants. You've maybe seen them fluttering around, or dandelion seeds blowing in the wind. They can be transported by water, so if they are floating, they can transport it in an ocean or in a river or in a lake, something like that. The fruits, nice and tasty, so animals can eat them and deposit them in fertilizer, like I talked about. By force, some plants can actually actively eject their seeds, and then, of course, animals, like we said, can help spread them, whether it be through eating and pooping them out somewhere, or like these birds just grabbing on a hold of that dog, and that dog will eventually get rid of them somehow, somewhere other than right next to the original plant where it picked it up. So thus, the plant has done its job. So basically, seeds are pretty much the major evolutionary milestone in the evolution of plants because they allow them to move all around the world.